Have you ever tried to explain your job to someone outside the church community? It's tricky, right? I mean, if you're like me, sometimes you get this kind of reaction. So I know you're pretty busy on Sundays, but what do you do the other 6 days of the week? I've been leading teams who are responsible for kids and teenagers for the past 15 years. And sometimes I still find it hard to explain everything that goes into making age group programming excellent. So you see, we create environments, plan content, recruit volunteers, gather resources. We spend around 40 to 50 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, doing everything we can to make the most of the time we have with kids and teenagers. And honestly, when I talk to some of my friends and I see what's happening in churches around the country, I think we do some remarkable work. But here's the thing. It's 1 hour. No matter how excellent our environments are, we only get this small window of opportunity every week. We can have the best and most compelling content in the world, but unless it gets amplified, the message can get lost. We can assemble the greatest volunteers and gather the best resources, but their impact will be limited by the time in which they're afforded. What if there was a way to have more influence than just 1 hour a week with a kid or teenager? Think about the math. In a typical week on average, we, representing the church and ministry leaders, will only have 1 hour of influence in the life of a child or teenager. That's 1 hour to make a lasting impact. That's 1 hour to influence a child or student. And that's only 1 hour to make a difference. That's all we're going to get. But in the average school week, a parent will have about 50 hours of influence in that same child or teenager. You see, that's 50 hours when they're not sleeping, not at a friend's house, and not at school. That's 50 focused and available hours to make a lasting impact. And it's not just about the math, it's about influence. You see, more time equals more influence. You don't have to look very far to see stats about the influence parents have on their kids. A good friend, Jeff Henderson from Gwinnett Church, recently did a survey of 18 to 34-year-olds. He was asking, when looking for advice, where do you most likely go? 73% of them said that they would go to their family first or second. In the book Millennials, Tom Rainer asked an open-ended question. What's most important in your life? And 61% of them said, family. See, no matter who you are, no matter what your family looks like, parents have influence in your life. Maybe that's why it's time for all of us to stop thinking only as age group leaders and start thinking family. You see, if you want to win influence with kids, you have to think family. If you want to win influence with teenagers, you have to think family. Let's be honest, even though you were probably hired to do something for a specific age group, one of the best ways that you can impact those you were hired to reach is to think family. You see, when you think age group, all of your programming and all of your events have one and only one focus. It seems that everything is directed at the child and teenager. When you have an age-graded ministry mindset, what you're saying is that we're going to squeeze everything we can out of our 1 hour. We act like everything that needs to be said we can do in this 1 hour. We pretend that everything that needs to be asked, they'll ask us in this 1 hour. And you know, we spend all of our time and energy trying to convince them to come to our 1 hour. You see, but when we do that, we tend to ignore the 50 hours that a parent has simply because they're a parent. What if we could have a greater influence on a kid or teenager by recognizing that we aren't the only influence in their life, and by acknowledging that this 1 hour isn't the only hour in their week? In order to get more hours of influence, in order to double, triple, or quadruple the amount of time you have to influence a child, you must, absolutely must develop a family ministry mindset. You see, when you develop a family ministry mindset, you invest quality time and resources, creating amazing programs for parents and their kids. You make a conscious decision, a very conscious decision, to tap into the influence a parent has to make an exponential impact. You know, you might decide that some of your events work better when parents and kids experience something together rather than separating them. You know, you might decide that some moments can be better experienced in the home, so you stop doing them and resource your parents to do them instead. You know, when you think family, you're constantly reevaluating what you do so that you can help parents and kids connect. And you know, when you think family, you choose to believe in two things, two really important things. that every parent wants to be a better parent. Let me say that again. Every parent wants to be a better parent. And you know what? Every parent can do something more. Even when a parent seems indifferent about your programming, even when a parent complains about you or your ministry, yes, even when a parent chucks a craft or handout in the parking lot, and by the way, it was printed in color, you continue to believe in them and you resource them because you know they matter in the life of their kid. You see, when you have an age group ministry mindset, you tend to promote what you want parents to know about your programs. When you focus on what you do for kids and teenagers, most of your communication with your parents is about what you want them to bring their kid to. But when you develop a family ministry mindset, you tend to focus on what you want parents to do at home. You see, instead of just giving parents information about what time they should drop their kids off, you also start giving them information that will help answer or start a simple spiritual conversation. When you tap into the influence of a parent, you start giving them cues that will help them take ownership of the spiritual growth of their own child. You see, cues help parents to know what to say and when to say it. Cues help a parent to take a step, just one step. You see, years ago, when we began to think family, we made a shift to cue parents with simple ways they could do something with their kids at home. And we began to see our influence and our impact increase several times over. You see, years ago, I remember we once had a dad named Joe come up and thank me after church one day for helping him. I didn't know why. You see, he'd been coming to our church for a long time, but was never very engaged with what his child was doing in our elementary area. Or so I thought. With tears in his eyes, he shared how our team helped him understand the importance of praying with his daughter. You see, he told me that before bed the previous night, he had prayed with his daughter for the very first time. He said his daughter hugged his neck tightly and said, "Thank you for talking to Jesus with me, Daddy." Joe's life was changed that night. You see, we celebrated as a team because Joe took a small step with us, a step that was so important for he and his family. You see, it's a conscious decision we make to believe that we are not the spiritual authority in the life of a child. A parent is. When you think family, when you have a family ministry mindset, you realize that what happens at home is far more important than what happens at church. You know, when you help a mom have a spiritual conversation with their daughter, the family wins. When you help a dad engage in a prayer with their son for the very first time, the family wins. And when the family wins, you win, and lives are forever changed.